Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. Mr. Death come riding in off the plains on his pale stallion, shooting off his pistols, bangity bang, woo! Everyone was all scared of him. Even the little ones, except for the grown folks. They kind of looked at him sort of familiar like. But Mr. Death, he never touched ne'er a soul that day. Except for Billy Badam Bangtree, the one the girls is all crazy for. And he no more than laid a finger on him, so he didn't die right off, only lay there kind of cold and sweating, bleeding from shot off with a bullet in his belly by a drunken cowpoke in a wild euchre game. Now many a gal in that town wet the pillow with their tear when they heard Billy was like to die, because he was a handsome fella. Drove all the women wild, much to the guys' chagrin. But old Injun Mary, she was nursing Billy back to health with poultices and healing herbs, so there weren't no one to get near him. And Maud Applegate, she was the one that cried and carried on the worst, but you can't expect her to really fret. Now she was a young lady, pretty as could be, freckles and red hair. And so she decided that there's something had to be done. So she dried her eyes with her pettiskirt, saddled up her daddy's pinto pony, and took out across the plains after Mr. Death. She rode high and she rode low. She rode through the cow country and the sheep country, through the sheep country to the Injun country, through the Injun country to the far mountains, where she caught up to Mr. Death about a mile outside the cabin where he lived with his granny. Now, she was all tuckered out. Her hair had fallen down like a pony's mane, and that poor little pinto pony was worn to skin and bone. But she sings out, "Mr. Death, wait up!" Now Mr. Death turned around surprised like, because there ain't far too many that are going to call out to halt him. So he looked back and he says, "Whoa, Missy, don't you look like you run clean through the briar patch? What can I do for you?" "Well, Mr. Death, I rode high and I rode low. I rode through the cow country into the sheep country, through the sheep country into the Injun country, through the Injun country, all to catch you up and see if you'd stay your hand against my beloved, my one true love, Billy Badam Bangtree." That is, Mr. Death threw his head back. "Oh my goodness! Ain't you about the cutest thing you like to see? Oh my goodness, my goodness!" Now I got to tell you, Maud Applegate, she didn't like to be laughed at, so no sir, man. Where she come from, she sat up real straight. She took to cussing Mr. Death right out. She said, "Who raised him anyway? She bet his mammy was spinning in her grave. Why, she knew trappers and old back folk that had better manners than he. My goodness, where'd he come from? She knew where she come from. No gentleman laughed at no woman in their true trouble." And Mr. Death, he sat up right straight like in his saddle, with nothing but his eyes a-blinking. And when Maud gave out a breath, he pulled out his backy bag, licked him a paper, and rolled him a smoke. "So, what do you give me for Billy Badam Bangtree?" Now Maud, she was really wound up. "I ain't going to talk business until I've had me a chance to clean up a little and have a bite to eat, because I rode high and I rode low." "Now wait a minute, that's okay, all right. I'll bring you on in. You can stay with my granny and she'll fix you up just fine." So he reined his pale stallion back and off into the cabin that they went to the yard there. And there was Granny standing at the gate a-waving, just as pleased as punch to finally see company. Well, he got them all in there and says, "My, ain't you just the prettiest little thing," Granny would say. "My goodness, you come on in here." And she was hobbling about on her crutch like a bird with a broken wing, and brought her in and set her up with a warm wash, nice ivory comb, and a blue silk ribbon from her brass-wrapped treasure chest. And when Mr. Death, he come in from fixing up the hosses, why, he saw her with that fire glowing behind her, and she looked like a red-headed angel. Oh, just a drinking tea. Now, Maud, she perked up right nice when she got some ribs inside her. And so she set them to laughing fit to bust with all the comical tales of her family back home. Well, Mr. Death, he started to yawn and, I rode twice around the world and back again. I think I'll take me a nap and closed his eyes and started to snoring. Well, Granny started to ask Maud where she'd come from and all about her. And sure enough, Maud told her all about Billy Badam Bangtree and all how he wanted to be saved and all that bullet in the belly and stuff. And that fetched a great sigh from Granny. She said, you know, seems to me like you're wasting your time on some liquored up old cowhand. But, you know, howsoever, since you're all set on this, I'll see what I can do to help you. And if my old eyes don't deceive me, Maud, I bet you can do a bit of magic too. Yeah, I can. Well, tell me now, black or white? Well, a little of both. I witched my little baby brother so he could pass his arithmetic test. And I witched the preacher's wife so she tripped and fell into the horse's trough. See, now that's a good thing, said Granny. That's a good start for a young'un like you. I just don't know. But since you got your heart set, I think I'll give you a hand. See, every time Mr. Death, he falls asleep like this, if you ask him 3 questions, he'll answer them truly for you. So what would you like me to ask him? Well, the first question she come up with is obvious. You all know what that's going to be. What's your price for getting off Billy Badam Bangtree? All right, you got one. No, you got 2 more. What's the next one? Now this she had to think about. Maybe you could tell me. Ask him why he took my baby sister from the cradle. All right, child, I will. You got 1 more. What's the last one? Now this Maud, she had to think about. Granny, ask him what he does when he's lonesome. Very well, we'll do that. Well, he started to snoring and just a tossing and turning. Granny reached over and grabbed a lock of his coal black hair and tweaked it, kind of gentle like that. And he, yes? Son, let me ask you a couple questions here. What's your price for letting off Billy Badam Bangtree? Oh, Granny, she's such a pretty little thing. Some might make it an eye or 10 years of life, but for her, she has to ride around twice the world with me and give me a kiss on the lips. Well, that Maud, she sat back a bit in her chair, a bit surprised like. Well, now here's the second question, Granny said. Why'd you take her baby sister from the cradle? Now he tossed, he turned, and kind of faced the fire a bit and said, baby was in pain. I took her so she'd never have to cry no more. And at that, Maud just kind of sat very quiet with her hands in her face. And the last question, what is it you do when you're lonesome? Now this took him a little while. He tossed, he turned his face away from the fire and said, Granny, I watch the human folk. As families, I want to see how they hold and sleep together in their arms and rest up in just their family life. And at that, they woke up. Oh my goodness, my star must have dozed right off there. Well, I got to tell you, Maud was pretty happy to find out that Mr. Death and his granny were, just despite their kind of a profession, they was kind and generous folk. Why, Granny, she got out herself a bottle of her blueberry wine, and Mr. Death, he got out his fiddle and played some merry old tunes, and oh, didn't Maud Applegate get up and dance a bit when she got up, picked up them skirts, and skittled across the floor. Well, it was pretty late when it was time to go to bed. Granny had fixed up her trunk of the bed right next to her 4-poster, and sleep she went. She dreamed the kind of dreams you only dream about, of waterfalls and ice cream. And sure enough, she woke up the next morning, and Granny, she'd mended her dress, pressed it all nice and clean, and had a coffee pot sit going, and did it smell good? And she had her bacon and grits and eggs all ready for her, so she'd have a nice breakfast to stay her stomachs while they went on out twice around the world. Well, Maud said, thank you very much, Granny. You've been hospitality was so mighty fine that if it wasn't for my love, Billy Badam Bangtree, I'd be right sorry to go. Well, Mr. Death helped her up on his gray stallion, and there they took off, each stood astride, and they took up off the mountains up into the sky, and she felt warm and comfortable wrapped around her arms of his waist, riding pillion-like. And into the sky, into where the clouds was a grazing with the mamas and the daddies and the little baby clouds. And up into the field where the stars grow, and Mr. Death let her pluck a couple and put them in her hair. Out across the moon, and she raced across the surface, and it was cold and slippery wet like. Couldn't go too near the sun, Mr. Death says, because you might get burned. But of course, he had lots to do. Sure enough. So they went all around the great worlds that everybody could see. And Mr. Death was kind of interesting because he'd put on his invisibility cloak and they would go down, and the folks that just getting ready to die, the living, they would start crying and carrying on. But the dying, they got up and sort of greeted him like a friend. And didn't Maud Applegate's eyes get open? She found everybody was like, no matter where they were from, whether they were in China or Japan or India or Africa, everywhere they went, they were peoples was just the same. And the rich and the poor didn't matter none. Opened up her eyes right nice like. And King come around, and at the end of it all, circled in through and took her out over the wonderful wide ocean where the whales was playing in the green ocean. Looked like buffalo just traveling across the green grassy plain of her hometown. Took her all along across over to India and watched the tigers play, and down the Nile and see the alligators swim just so gentle-like. At the end of it all, they pulled up in our town next to, right through into the Tarbell Emporium, past the Wells Fargo building, and parked up right in front of the Wells Fargo, right in front of the Bluebird Saloon. Why are you stopping here for? Never mind, you'll understand. So got her off and wrapped that invisibly cloak around her one more time. Now for the second part of the bargain. Okay, she said. So she stood herself real stiff, and she got ready. Nothing happened. Mr. Death said, no, Mom. The deal was you were to kiss me. So she was obliged to ask him to bend down a bit, which he did. And she was obliged to stand up just a little bit and put her lips on his. Now, I don't know if you know this, but she was awful fearful of what it would be like to kiss Mr. Death. But I gotta tell you, she doesn't remember quite how it happened. But her arms were all around his neck, and it was Mr. Death that stepped away first. Now, go along. Your true love is in there. Billy Badam Bangtree is inside the Bluebird Saloon. With that, he unwrapped her from his invisibility cloak and walked away, and all you could hear was his spurs jingling. Now, boy, she caught Billy Badam Bangtree sitting in the Bluebird Saloon with a bunch of fly young women of a kind that doesn't mind sitting in saloons. Now, she got all full of feelings right there, because here's her true love. And she thought, I don't know whether I want to lambaste him upside the head with a hitching post or take off and just go and melt into the side. About that time, Billy Badam Bangtree caught her through the window and come swaggering out through the swinging doors. Oh, but isn't Maud Applegate come see me outside the Bluebird Saloon? Heard you was white. Heard you was mighty sick. Yeah, mighty sick. Oh, I'm dying. But old Injun Mary, she fixed me up real good in all of her poultice and healing herbs. Oh, no, that was the last straw. As Maud Applegate, she rode high and she rode low. She rode through the cow country to the sheep country, to the sheep country, the Indian country, to the far mountains where she caught up with Mr. Death and made him stay. She took a trip twice around the world, kissed a strange man on the lips, all to save this whiskey-drinking, loose-living, womanizing cow herd. Looked at her like she was a ripe peach, and all he had to do was shake the tree. Well, she wasn't about to do anything. She was about ready to turn around and just walk away when she got a better idea, because old man Tarbell was leaning out his window. Sure enough, he let loose one of his backy wads. She whacked it right into Billy Badam Bangtree's eyes. And while he was standing there a-cursing and a-swearing in such language as no lady cares to hear, she took up on her pinto pony, who was just parked out, all dressed up nice for outside the Bluebird Saloon. And she kicked the heels in and set the dust a-flying and went on out to see Mr. Death. She rode through the cow country, the sheep country, through the sheep country, the Indian country, the far mountains, where she saw Mr. Death right up above the timberline, and there she was, she sang out, "Mr. Death!" And Mr. Death, he turned around, and he turned back his horse, for he turns back for no one. But for her, he did. Picked her up off that little pinto and gave her a big old hug and said, "Granny's going to be mighty proud to see you. Just don't let me catch you spying on folk ever no more." So Miss Maud Applegate, she took to helping Mr. Death. She's with him to this day, as far as I know. And when I was little, my grandma would sit there and tell me, "John, you be good now. You go to sleep, close your eyes. And Maud Applegate come sing you a lullaby." And she did too. Heard her myself.